folks, Doc here. I thought I would take this opportunity before the weather goes full retard for the season to give you a little bit of a retrospective look at Fugazi. I'm going to go over some features and details that I neglected to show in other videos, kind of one of those let's just do this and then I ride it out and completely forgot that I forgot to show you guys. I'm going to go over what works and what doesn't, what I'm really happy about on this machine, and what I'm going to change for next year, because believe me, I do have some changes coming. So, what do you say we dig into this? Alright, so I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with the Fugster as she sits, but I'm going to go over some of this stuff anyways. Just get the hood open here. Give you a look at the engine compartment. Under the hood we've got a more or less stock 16 horsepower Briggs & Stratton Vanguard V-twin vertical. It is again more or less stock with the addition of this pull start that I took off a 10 horse Yanmar diesel clone. That would be the engine that I used in the Diesel Weasel, and I just put the starter cup on there, riveted this down to the housing so that I could have a full start, which does, as you can see, work well. Quite happy with the modification. I had some charging system issues. I went dead on the trail twice. Quick tug, away she goes. Love it. I'm also very happy with the hood modification. This is beautiful. Gives lots of access. Not your typical flip forward mower hood thingy. Very happy with that. Pins and latches work well. Not going to be any change there. On top of the hood, I've got this little bracket thingy here that I picked up cheap from Princess Auto, and what that is my phone holder. And part of the reason I did this was because of the fact that a couple of my new onboard cameras have the Wi-Fi capability to project the image onto a phone screen, which is easier for lining up shots and monitoring and controlling the camera. So having my phone right in front of me was just a handy little deal. So I bolted this thing to the hood, holds the phone. I did buy a waterproof pouch for the phone, and when it's all clipped in there, it's safe, it's secure, it's waterproof, it's good. Most of you are no doubt familiar with this bumper that I built, and I built this out of 3/4 inch and 1 inch EMT. That's electrical conduit, and I just kind of tossed that together one afternoon and capped the open ends, and the brackets are 1/4 inch steel plate, which I recycled from, oh crap, I don't even remember what that was. Do not remember, but they bolt into the frame there underneath the hood, and it's solid. I've whacked it off a couple of trees, sort of an emergency brake sort of thing, and as you can see, I've got a camera mount stuck on there, and really happy with the bumper, so no change there. And I'll get to this little pin in a minute. The Nylite LED headlight pods have been excellent. I've submerged them a few times. You know, it's been into the elements, as you can see. There is no sign whatsoever of any kind of moisture ingress into them. For the price point, they're amazing and they give great light. So we're definitely going to stick with those, and we're definitely going to be using more Nylite units in the future. Now, that little pin right there, what's that all about? That little pin is directly related to that bracket right there, and it's a piece of angle that I welded to the frame, proximate to the axle, drilled a hole through it, and drilled a hole through the axle. And what that is a pivot lock. Of course, the suspension, the front suspension articulates, and that's really good for, you know, all-terrain and trail use and mud runs and stuff like that. But with Fugazi here being a rally machine, I wanted to be able to do some high-speed dirt road stuff and have the stability of, you know, a non-pivoting front axle. But I didn't want to permanently disable the pivot. So that was my solution. A little more. There we go. What I can do is jack this linch pin in there, and it locks it. No articulation. Easy in, easy out. It's obviously a little bit harder with the weight of the machine on it, but it's still doable. I've done it a couple of times now. And, you know, pin in, pin out, keep the pin on the front bumper to lock out the articulation for the high-speed road runs. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with my foot throttle there, which was the brake pedal from a Yamaha Virago motorcycle. And that all works like a dream. Happy with that, keeping that. And I've got my little trail hatchet there in a holster. That's all good. And I'll get this out of the way, but I guess I'll show you. That is a tethered kill switch, and I decided that would be a good safety item for when things get a little bit crazy, so I installed that. And of course I've got my starter button, ignition switch, headlight switch here. And over here I've got this little access compartment. Instead of having to take screws out to get at the wiring and fuses, I just used a piano hinge and a window latch. And of course over here I've got the 12 volt accessory port for keeping the phone charged, and everything else, that's waterproof, good to go. This here is my choke control, and I left the throttle lever in here for now, which does nothing at the moment, but I might make it connect to the throttle so that I can throttle up and give it a high idle for quick charging the battery, you know, or purposes like that. So I haven't removed it. I think I'm going to leave it in. I of course blocked off the hole for the lift lever with some aluminum tread. And this here is the parking brake handle from a Honda 3813 lawn tractor that I tied into the factory brake and disconnected the clutch pedal from the brake. So now that clutches only, and that is my only brake. Now I'm going to take a moment to note that one of the upgrades in the off season is going to be hydraulic brakes. That will remain as a parking brake or hill holder, and the service brake will be hydraulic. Back here we've got an ATV Cargo Rack that I had to make some modifications to mount on this machine. I wasn't going to do a rack, but you know, I'm carrying the camera equipment around and stuff like that. You know, food, drinks, whatever, tripod. I needed a rack. So I just did a little bit of modification. I think this one came from the Polaris Trail Boss. Didn't have to do much to it. I made up some 16 gauge tabs to bolt it down to the body. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cut it out for the parking brake handle. And I had to cut out this tube here and then install a new piece of tube here to give it its structure back. And I had to do that, of course, for my toolbox, so that when I wanted into the toolbox, you know, I could get into it. This bar would have been in the way. Of course, back here we've got that Resonator exhaust system, the dual mode, and you guys should check out the video on that if you're not familiar with it. That was a compressor air tank. I've got straight dual pipes coming back to it. There is no packing or baffling in the Resonator, and I love the sound of this thing, and anybody that's ridden with me will attest to how good this damn thing sounds. Absolutely love it. No change there for sure. These Fender Flares that were made out of a tractor trailer mud flap are excellent. They do a good job of keeping control of the flying goo, and they are super durable. They're flexible, but very, very durable. Definitely not going to be changing. Under the seat we've got the vent tube for the 820 transaxle with a filter on it just to help keep the crap out of it. And we've got 4 seat springs. Factory setup is only 2. Which were back here, and I had to move, and the reason I had to move it was to make room for this Craftsman battery box, which the battery hides in, and I like that. It's got the latching lid, but I had to move the seat springs. When I moved the seat springs forward, I found that, you know, the leverage upon the springs made it so that the seat was too bouncy, so I added 2 more springs, and that seems to have solved the issue. So that's good there too. Getting into the back side of this Mamma Jamma, there's the Peerless 820 that I created the dock locker 820 for, with the 1-inch single solid live axle. Very happy with that. I've got no issues with it except for that chunk that I knocked out of the case. And that brings me to another upgrade that I'm going to be doing in this off season, which is a skid plate. Right now I'm trying to come up with viable skid plate options. You guys saw the one, I'm sure, that I did on Mule, which I basically cut out of a mower deck and, you know, did a little bend and did some reinforcing, and that thing was dynamite. I could have dropped it off the building right onto the, you know, transaxle area. Skid plate wouldn't have dented. It was strong as hell. Liabilities, though, is number one, it was pretty heavy, and I am trying to keep the weight down on this machine, keep it light and nimble and quick. Number two, it acted like just the ultimate shelf, and you know, every time I ran Mule, especially in the mud or on loose ground, the thing would collect 50 pounds of crap on top of the skid plate. between the skid plate and the transaxle. So, you know, I'd have to, you know, take that off periodically and get it, you know, with a hammer and a scraper and just get all the crap out of there. So what I'm trying to do, and if you've got some ideas that maybe I haven't thought of, put them in the comments. I'm trying to engineer a skid plate that's going to act, you know, as armor, but I'm looking for lightweight, and I'm looking for not going to collect a ton of crap. So I'm seeking alternative materials, maybe aluminum, or I'm thinking about even UHMW polyethylene, something like that that's going to reduce weight but still be strong. Now, that still doesn't address the fact that it's going to be a catch-all, and I don't want this great big shelf holding all this junk that I pick up from the mud bogs and the trails and here, there, and everywhere. So my thought was, okay, I could take a 2-inch hole saw or whatever and punch a bunch of speed holes in it to allow it to release the crap that it's trying to trap. The liability to a bunch of these big holes in the damn thing, and if the holes are too small, it won't release the crap, but if the holes are too big in it, it's not going to skid over objects, and skid plates need to skid. I don't want something that's going to hang me up. It might protect the transaxle from damage, but I don't want it to act like an anchor. So, still burning the brain cells thinking of ideas for that. The one item that made it onto my this has got to go shite list is the factory steering on these things. Now, I'm trying to hold this thing as center as I can. Mower's parked on a bit of an angle, but that's not the camera fooling with you. My wheels are towed out. See if I can get over top of it a little bit. And the reason for this is pretty much the design of the spindles. First off, they're not adjustable, which is, you know, retarded and cheap. Secondly, instead of having a tie rod and a drag link, you know, you've got these two drag links with heavy bends in them that go to the sector gear. Let's see if I can get under there and show you that. There you go. Okay, so you've got one drag link going to each wheel from there. They've got some pretty substantial, excuse me, bends in them, which makes them hard to duplicate to make something beefier. But the biggest issue is the spindles themselves. Let me see if I can just straighten that out a little bit here, give you a better view. Okay, so, you know, you kind of look at the steering tab on that spindle there, and it's fairly light gauge, and it's bent to, you know, what is perceived to be the correct shape. And then we come over to this side of the machine, and you can kind of see it's bent on a different angle, and it's got a pretty good tweak in it. And that right there is the source of the steering issues. Now, if you're bombing through mud all day long, no, it's probably not a problem. But I'm climbing rocks and bashing it off stumps and stuff like that, and that's when it shows to be a really weak point. So this tab will bend, and that throws the steering out of alignment, and there's nothing you can do but try and bend it back. That has got to go. So I've been weighing out my options, and, you know, I could simply reinforce those. But that still leaves me with these drag links that I don't really like that system. So I'm probably going to wind up changing out the whole axle and steering system. It's probably going to be a pretty big modification to go with something beefier. I do have a spare Suburban front axle that came out of Commando, just hanging off to my left here. And I might try and mod that in. The spindles are different lengths, so I'm going to have to play with ride height and stuff if I do that. But basically what it seems to come down to is I'm probably going to swap out the entire front axle and the better part of the steering system too. That'll be a big mod, but I want to make this thing damn near bulletproof when it comes to thrashing this on the tougher terrain. Sitting here on the shop floor minding its own business is an 18-horse vertical Vanguard. And I'm very strongly considering putting that in. Now, there's nothing wrong with the 16 that's in her. Runs well, doing its job. You know, no lack of power, that's for sure. I've kind of wheelied when I didn't want to. However, more power, right? Right. So, I've got this 18-horse Vanguard in your typical stock form. And part of the reason I want to swap it in is because of this. I have to rebuild it, but I've got this lovely 2-barrel carburetor from an 18-horse Vanny. A few of them were available with these things as stock. This is a single-barrel variant right here. Now this carburetor here, and I'd like to thank Matthew Maddox for it. We made a trade deal. I sent him a single. He was having trouble with this. I was going to put this on the 16-horse Vanny that's in Fugazi right now. And then this 18 came my way, and I went, oh, what the hell? You know, a couple more horsepower while I'm at it? Sure, why not? Now, this steel airbox here, I do, by the way, have the manifold for the 2-barrel as well, and the air cleaner base that matches the opening and blah, 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 blah. But this steel airbox does not fit in Fugazi. I had to switch over to a plastic airbox when I put the headlights in because this thing's just too damn big. So what I think I'm going to do is kind of part and parcel with the whole engine change, carburetor change, blah, 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 is I'm going to fabricate my own airbox with a filter and snorkel the sucker while I'm at it. So the airbox has to be smaller to fit in the provided space, and since I'm fabricating, I think I'm going to snorkel it too, because the last thing I want to do is inhale a pile of water when I decide to wet its toes. You guys have seen the kind of chaos that can be caused when an engine inhales water. I don't have to name any names, but it ain't pretty, right? Right, so we're going to snorkel it. As you guys know, I was suffering a little bit of belt slip in the really deep water. So I'm thinking about a double pulley clutch, and that's pretty much a no-brainer. The ratio that I'm running, which I'm struggling to remember right now, I think it's 6 in the front, 5 in the rear, or 5.5 in the rear, is a great ratio. It gets me some good wheel speed when I need it, and it's still low enough that, you know, shifting down into first, I can climb anything. And the big benefit, of course, is engine braking going down a steep decline. I can put it in first, let the clutch off, I don't need to touch the brakes, and it just crawls down under full control. It's beautiful. That's not going to have to change. Now, it kind of goes without saying that when you build up a lawn tractor for off-road thrashing, as I have done here, that you're going to find weak points along the way. You know, we've thrashed garden tractors, and they're a little bit more up to the task in more or less stock form, even though I changed a bunch of stuff on Commando, and there's more changes for Commando coming too. With the lawn tractors, they're obviously lightweight and they're not very durable to begin with. So as you guys know, I've already changed out the transaxle and I put in a modified 820, and I'm beefing this up and beefing that up, and the steering's got to go. But I'm not necessarily going to just, you know, necessarily bash Murray for it being fairly weak for cutting the grass. I'm sure it's fine. One thing that I also discovered, aside from that little bendy thing and the stupid little drag links, is that the steering geometry is crap. It really is. Again, for cutting the grass, I suppose that wasn't an issue, and with an unlocked differential, I suppose that wasn't an issue, but I'm not happy with the geometry on top of everything else. So that being said, you know, I'm not going to bash these Murrays. I actually kind of like them. I like the C-channel frame rails, and I like the looks of them, and, you know, a couple of other factory stock features. But when you take something and turn it into something it ain't supposed to do, you're going to find all the weak links in the chain, and that's what I'm doing, is I'm addressing the weak links, because I want to see just how much I can get out of a lawn tractor. So with that being said, that's pretty much my hit list for the winter of this year, so that I can have something just a little bit more bulletproof for next year, so I can beat the crap out of it. There will be some excellent action videos to come. Me and the boys, I don't want to spill the beans yet, but me and some of the boys are actually plotting and scheming some events, you know, actual events, not just we're going to ride on the grill. That should be good for a chuckle and might have some decent carnage too. So stick around and stay tuned for that, and of course over the course of the winter I'm going to be working on a bunch of my junk, this thing included. I've got some work to Commando to do. I really want to get the Kaiser Bannerman project kicking off. I've kind of maybe changed my plans for it. I might simplify it a little bit just to get it up and running, because it's just such a huge laundry list of stuff that I want to build on that thing, and that's partially what's stopping the build from happening at this point. It's like, where do you even begin? Anyways, that said, thanks for tuning into Sprocket's Garage on YouTube and liking and sharing and subscribing. Be sure to check out SulphurCityDesign.com to feed your adhesive addiction, to get the stickers and the tees and the hoodies and whatnot. And check out Sprocket's Garage on Facebook, where it's more than just mowers. Pretty much anything mechanical or garage related belongs there. I'll see you there. Till next time, take care of yourself.